Hi, how you doing? I'm Mitch. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Very first video. Uh, this came about because somebody gave me a blow up off my Instagram and my website. Some of you might know him, the best fabricator of metal in the country, if not the world, the Pope of Welding. I sent him a message and he reposted it along with a really beautiful response. And through that response, I met someone who suggested I get a hold of Death from Lockdown23and1. And I did a few interviews with him on his YouTube channel. And he suggested, along with my wife and several people who saw it, that I start my own video YouTube channel. So I did. And you guys are subscribers and viewers. And so I'd just like to thank Jesse James, the Pope of Welding, and Death for all the help they gave me. I mean, I'm very grateful. It's got me opening doors. It's just amazing thing. So I hope you enjoy the very first video I'm doing here on my YouTube channel, which is an interview with DeathIbring from Lockdown23and1. I just thought it was fitting that he'd be my first interview since he interviewed me. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoy the interview. Good morning. My name's Mitch, and I'm here interviewing Death from Lockdown23and1.
What's up, buddy?
Good morning.
Good morning, man. It's a pleasure to come on to your show after having you on my show quite a bit. This is a good change of pace, you know?
Yeah, well, I figured I should have you as my first YouTube video.
Excellent, man.
Brand new channel.
Yeah.
So you live on the East Coast, right?
East Coast, Virginia. Virginia Beach is where I reside now.
So we're like worlds apart in the same country.
Yeah.
You know, since you got basically your channel's about prison and stuff, and I've been to prison. That's kind of what brought us together. How old were you when you first went to prison or started getting involved with things that led you toward prison?
Well, what I went to prison for was something that I wasn't even doing on the streets. It started when I was about 13 or 14.
Yeah.
I started breaking into cars, just stealing CD players and stuff like that. Might joyride a few cars. I've even done burglaries, and I started stepping up my criminal activities to, robbing dope dealers and stuff like that. Doing even bigger burglaries. It was more planned. It wasn't when you're 13, 14, if the door's unlocked, you're going in. These were more planned as I got older. In 17. I graduated high school at 17 years old, and shortly after, I'd say probably a month after, I ended up stabbing someone. And the whole situation occurred on my parents' property because I was living with my parents. And it was all behind a girl. I still don't even know the whole story behind it. Because the guys, I didn't know anything about them that got out the car to try to jump me at my parents' house.
Right.
But I went and got a weapon. And I stabbed the guy up that swung on me first. And, I wasn't out there really committing a lot of physical, harm to people. It was just, I was a thief, so going to prison for that was not something I was expecting. It was
like impulsive, or
I mean, it was, I was violent to an extent. If you mess with me, I'll do something. But
she kind of went from like vandalism to theft. And so like the theft stuff, were you like involved with drugs and stuff? Because I know you just mentioned like robbing drug dealers, or
I mean,
were you like smoking weed or using drugs or drinking or anything like that?
Yeah, I was definitely dabbling in all kinds of stuff. But to be honest, a lot of people might laugh at me, but I was addicted to weed, man. I was smoking a lot of weed a day, and that shit gets expensive, but ecstasy, cocaine, stuff like that, I was dabbling, messing around with. But I knew that shit was not what I was supposed to be dealing with. It would kill me if I keep on going. So I would always end it, 3 months, 4 months after doing it, and move on to something else. But weed was always consistent, and weed is what I need. Yeah. And then when you get older, I didn't want to work. So I just wanted money for clothes, partying.
Were you drinking too?
Oh yeah, I wasn't drinking too much unless I was at parties and stuff like that. But it was mainly just weed, man. And
Yeah.
I got I started playing with guns, and
Right.
the thievery turned into armed robberies. And
Okay.
when I realized the power of a gun, then I realized, you know what, we can hit up some bigger fish.
Well,
And
guns are kind of intimidating to people.
they are, man.
A gun in someone's face, they'll probably do just about whatever you want.
Yeah, and I was a little dude. I was tiny. I'm still a little guy. I mean, I got some muscle, but back then I looked like a young, frail little punk, And when I first put that gun to someone's face, I was terrified, man. I ain't gonna lie, I was terrified. But I said, screw it, I'm gonna try it. I heard my friends were doing it and having good results, so I said I'm gonna do it. And first time I did it, I'll never forget it. I was terrified. After the initial 30 seconds of seeing their facial expressions and how much fear was put into their heart, it was like it was an overwhelming feeling, like kind of godlike to make someone do anything
I've heard people
want.
say that before, like they felt like they had power of God when they like a gun. I never got into like the robberies and using guns too much because I was always afraid, like if I went to rob somebody with a gun and they said no.
Oh,
like
man.
Put a gun in someone's face, tell them, give me this or do that, and they don't. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
Because I come from an environment like, if you make a threat and you don't, the other person doesn't cooperate.
Follow up, yeah.
You have to follow through, which in that case, it means shooting them
or pistol whipping them, something. But that was also a big fear of mine because a thief isn't trying to commit murder. He's just trying to get what he needs to get and get on his way. And so there's a tactic, some tactics, put fear into people's hearts more than others.
So you went to prison for stabbing this guy the first time?
It was malicious wounding at first. Well, I thought I was going to get a murder charge because they said that they didn't know if he was going to make it or not or something like that. And then and I had abduction as well. They said I abducted him.
Okay.
I beat that charge, and they dropped the malicious wounding down to unlawful wounding, which is a maximum of only 5 years per, given the last charge was 25 or more. So the judge took into consideration, it was my property. I guess, I just used too much force. And I thought I was doing everything within the laws.
In California, like if someone breaks into your house or on your property, you're supposed to call a cop. So you're only allowed in California to use as much force as necessary to remove the threat, and then you're supposed to call a cop. So like if someone breaks in your house and they're in your house and you kill them, you're going to jail for murder.
And a lot of places.
There's no self-defense rules out here. They just want you to be a victim and call
they just want you to lay down, call the law, and hope to God they don't kill you. And that's what the judge said. He said, you left and grabbed the knife. I didn't leave. I only went about 15 feet behind me, grabbed a knife, and came back. He said, you could have ran and left. Why am I going to leave my house, though? Why am I going to run off my property to run from these idiots? And, one thing I want to say before we move on, man, the shit that I did in the past, robbing and stealing, man, some of that shit, that shit is like the bottom of the barrel to me. And I can't, I strongly feel bad about all the stuff that I did. And looking back at it, that's not the type of guy I am. I'm a very kind-hearted guy. So it makes me sick thinking about some of that shit that I did, man. And
it's kind of embarrassing to think about some of the things I did when I was a kid before I kind of woke up.
Yeah, it's embarrassing, man. That's a good word for it.
So when you went to the joint, you go to like do you go to an adult facility? You said you're 17 or?
Yeah, well, I was in TDH, Tidewater Detention Home. But see, the way that this whole thing unfolded was I was literally turning 18. Within a few months or so. So when I turned 18, I was in, the adult side of jail and all that. And I mean, I didn't know what to expect. I knew juvenile. I knew what juvenile was like, but.
So you were with older cats?
Yeah, I was in a
Okay.
maximum security block with killers, rapists,
Right.
you name it.
So
It
like
was
you are, so there you are, a young guy, 17, turned 18. I was in the same situation. I was 17. Uh, so did you have like older guys kind of, hey, give you some game on how to? So I imagine that's like a county jail type environment before you went to the pen. Did anybody give you any like schooling, as a
yeah.
youngster or anything?
Yeah,
Like
nobody gave me any game when I first walked in. I'd say probably a month went by before I started getting to know this guy who was trying to help me out with my charges and stuff. But when I first went in there, man, it was a bunch of shenanigans. Over here in Virginia, they populate everyone together, and it's not
right,
segregated in any way, shape, or form, from
right,
jail all the way to prison. It's not forcibly segregated or anything like that. So I'll never forget the first time I went in there, man. I had a spork the first night. I had a spork underneath my pillow, thinking I was gonna have to do some damage with the sport. Even though there ain't nothing really you could do with that little flimsy thing. But I was so terrified. They put me in there during nighttime, so it was pretty much locked down immediately after. So I was in my cell. It was like a 8-man cell, and it was the longest night of my life, man. Because there's this guy, I'll never forget it. His name was, well, I'm not gonna say his name, but anyway, he snored his ass off. He snored
oh God,
so bad. And
so,
I got no sleep, man. And I was all, terrified someone might try me or something as well. So I got no sleep. And it
right,
happened like that for 2 days. But the next day, people were I was telling people my charges. Everyone ain't giving me no kind of help or assurance, help, anything. They just were saying, man, you're not leaving here until you're 40, 50. You're done, dude. And then I had some petty charges as well. I had detectives coming to talk to me about some petty crimes at a pawn shop. They seen that a bunch of stuff was sold and stuff like
so they were
that.
trying to stack you up.
Yeah, they were stacking me up left and right. And I was found guilty for a grand larceny as well. But, there was this guy in there. This just goes to show you how much they weren't helping you. This guy in here was like, he was trying pretty much to coerce me to go snitch to get out of my charges. He's like, yo, tell the detectives you got some shit to say. Cause
Another inmate told you that?
yeah. He was trying to convince me to, but it was all game. After later on staying in the same block, I realized this guy was just trying to have some entertainment off of me. Older dude. And that's what it was. I didn't snitch or anything like that. I was like, nah, I'm not doing that, and that's how it unfolded. But I had, I was the kind of guy that stuck to myself, man, and I didn't really ask too much for help from anyone because nobody was willing to even care about what was going on in my life. It's like everyone.
They are segregated. So, but all the races want to know, hey, what are you here for? How you doing? Where you from? And then I had some older cats give me a little game on how to live and stuff.
Yeah.
So after you did your county jail time, you went to prison, right? From there.
Yeah, I went to prison from there.
Okay, so and did they have like different levels of prison there? Like out here, they have prisons that like how to explain it? Like some of them are a little mellower than others. Others,
yeah, they got
hardline shit.
Yeah, they got level 1, which is like, they have a prison over here is level 1. It's called Indian Creek. It's pretty much for like drug rehab and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It goes 2, 3, 4, 5, being maximum security and all that.
Right.
But one thing before we get into the prison scene about jail, sooner or later, within a month or so, I started having guys really give me the game because I was preparing for prison. I was preparing for pretty much my rest of my life in prison. I was facing abduction. That was a serious charge with firearms. So that was my life. I started getting plucks. I started getting tattoos in jail. I was preparing for the pen in every way possible, gleaning all the information from anyone and everyone that's been there. And that's typically what happens in jail. What's prison like? Hey, what it might be all right, man, and so I eventually had good people helping me out.
Information, or they try to tell you, hey, what?
Yeah, it was both sides. It was either you're gonna be all right, man. I know, trust me, or you could die. It was never no in between. So I was like, God, man, I don't know what to expect. But yeah, I beat the abduction. I went to prison for unlawful wounding. And I went to a prison. It's a medium prison, pretty much where all the lifers that haven't caught no charges in a while, their level drops. That's the lowest that they can go. So I went there. It was called Greensville, and the place was just immense. It was huge. I mean, it was just the size alone of the place and the amount of people walking around there. It terrified me, man. You know, I said I didn't know what the hell was going to happen, but yeah, that prison was pretty vicious. I seen some wild things in there.
So after you've been there a while, you kind of assimilate and get a program going, or?
Well, my first bid was, I guess you could call it a party bid. You know, it was like, because I went to prison twice, and the first time, you know, I was still young. I had one thing in mind. After I got there, believe it or not, man, I mean, I really didn't have too many problems going into the cell block for the first time. I actually became friends, and you know, a lot of people say don't take no gifts from nobody when you first get into prison, and that's true. A lot of stuff like that does happen where they're trying to trick you. Because over here in the East Coast, there is a lot of rapings and stuff like that going on.
Wow.
And
well, like when I went to the pen, I'm from San Diego. And even after I've been in the pen a long time, if I transfer to another pen, like one of my homeboys would come to cell and say, I heard you're from San Diego. Yeah, you know, what do you need? Like back when they had tobacco, they'd slide me a couple cans of Copenhagen, bring me some coffee, shampoo, all that. And back then I had some hair on my head. So it's like, hey, homeboy, here you go. You know, and they look out for you. But and then, you know, so once you got in there, like, I know it's not segregated there. So like, are there any types of politics there other than like race things, keeping the races separate? Kind of
the politics
out there?
Yeah, the politics, there's definitely politics in there, you know, but let's say a white guy wants to had a problem with a black guy and he wants to fight him. You can fight him right there on the spot. You might, if the black guy is affiliated with some gang or something, you might have some repercussions afterwards, but it ain't going to start a huge white on black riot, you know? But it's mainly gang politics, and a gang out there that ran pretty much everything. And from what I hear still to this day is the Bloods. They ran everything in there.
Everything, huh?
Yeah, but the white guys.
And so what if the white guys are doing stuff like some type of illegal activity in prison, and then this the blacks, you know, the black gangs said like, hey man, we want a piece of that. You know,
it happens. It's happened.
So, and then does that create a racial thing or what?
Well,
do the white guys kind of get together and say, you know, we're not having that?
Yeah, from what I've seen, Mitch, and this is not to break down or put down any kind of racial background or anything, but from what I've seen, white dudes in prison, I mean, if they were bringing in some kind of work like that, they usually kept it to themselves. And if they did find word of it, some people, they'd be like, let me get that. And they wouldn't say, let me get a piece of it. They'd be, let me get it all. And the white guys, see, I think they just didn't have not only the numbers, but they didn't have the structure, you know? So when something happened to a white guy, the other white guys just stood there and watched, man. And that's all there was to it. I mean,
so they don't really realize that, you know, next time it's them.
Yeah,
they have that kind of mentality. Like, because out here it's like, look, man, you know, the white dudes stick together, you know, Mexicans stick together, and then within the Mexicans they have Northern California Mexicans, Southern California, and then Bloods and Crips and they're all separated too. I mean, they go to the same yard, and they don't. There's prisons where they function on the same yard.
Yeah.
Like when I was in Corcoran on the main line there, they function separately.
Yeah.
You know, even the blacks, because they have Crips and Bloods, you know. But they don't tell the white dudes nothing, you know. I mean,
that's
when I used
That's
to do things in there, a little, there's no, we're taking that, or because that would be that's cause for killing people.
yeah, it's cause for riot, killing people, and like I said, I mean, some establishments, the three white guys will stand up with each other, but
Yeah,
the majority of what I've seen from county, from city jail to all the
right,
prisons that I've been in, white dudes had no power. They were the first ones to be extorted, first ones to get their cheeks taken. And that's all there was to it. And there wasn't nothing that they were doing about it. They would just hope and pray that it wasn't them that was getting attacked the next day.
right.
And of course, there's a lot of white dudes that were GD, part of these black organizations. So, I mean,
Oh, really?
yeah,
What's
the
GD? What's that mean? Like,
gangster disciple.
oh,
Uh,
it's okay.
yeah. So I mean, you would see a lot of these white dudes. They they're not. I guess you would say just rolling with whites. They would be rolling with black guys, and that's how it was.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I'm sure there was, prison flips and flops all the time. So there might
right.
be certain times where a certain group of white guys came in there and they had a little bit of say so. But from what I've seen, 8 years in and out the system, the first one to be victimized every time was a white dude.
Yeah, I
And
can imagine. The way it's. I've heard not just in Virginia, but all over the East Coast, kind of.
yeah,
Number structure is not there. Like when
it's
I
not.
first went to prison out here, there was a certain prison like a DVI. It's Tracy, right? The white dudes are getting the short end of the stick. They had a black prison gang and a Hispanic, excuse me, gang. They were killing white dudes, and then they had white guys that were, uh, they would go and they were affiliated with the blacks and the northern Mexicans, but they would hang around the whites and then go tell the blacks and the northern Mexicans what the white guys were doing.
Low
They
informants.
had a name. They were like the something family or whatever. And
Yeah.
when them guys got transferred to other prisons, they got killed. I mean, they were killed. That thing didn't last too long because when I went to prison, that was kind of the end of that. So, like, if some white dude's doing stuff out there, and another one of these white guys goes to the blacks or whatever, tells me they're plotting to do this or that, they just get away with that out there.